So it's the medieval times, Red Rome has collapsed and now everyone's busy arguing over whose saints' bones are holier. Enter Pepin the Short, king of the Franks and living proof that you can conquer half of Gaul and still get bullied by history for being pocket-sized. He does some respectable king things, helps out the Pope by donating some land, and then promptly dies in 768. And as in tradition, his kingdom is split between his sons. Charles, not the Great yet, and his brother Charlemagne, who immediately dies, no questions asked. And just like that, half of Western Europe lands in Charles's lap. Now Chuck's in charge, and he scans the map like, wow, so many pagans, so little time. Cue the Saxon Wars, 30 years of trying to baptize a group of people who would rather be waterboarded than converted. See, the Franks were tight with the Pope, like sleep over and braid each other's hair tight, which meant Charlemagne got divine legitimacy and an eternal to-do list of holy wars. Meanwhile, the Saxons were just out there minding their own business, hugging trees, chanting in forests, and maybe tossing a goat or two into a bonfire on the weekends. Charlemagne spent more than half of his reign exterminating these pagans, and then came 782, the massacre of Verdun. In one of the least holy moves in Christian history, Charlemagne went full wrath of God, executing 4,000 Saxons for falling the "Do you love Jesus" pop quiz. The Pope was ecstatic. Finally, a tall, sword-happy Christian man who actually read his mail. Now, as this holy purge against the Saxon pagans was going on in the background, Charlemagne turned his sight onto Italy, where the Lombards were swaggering around like they mattered. Their king had beef with the Pope, and Charlemagne, always down for more papal points, stormed in and crushed them in 774. The Lombards really didn't care as long as they had a king, so not much resistance. To really twist the dagger, Charlemagne married the Lombards' king's daughter, then dumped her like expired milk. So now Charlemagne was king of the Franks and the Lombards. Then big boy Charles looked west, towards Spain, chasing the nostalgic vibes of his grandpa, Charles Martel, who once slapped the Umayyads so hard at Tours they saw Jesus and Muhammad at the same time. So Charlemagne marches in, ready to liberate the place from Muslim rule, only to get stuck trying to siege Zaragoza in 778. He eventually ditched the plan, and on the way back, his rearguard got ambushed at Roncesvalles Pass by some extremely unamused Basques. His buddy Roland dies, Charlemagne shrugs, and medieval poets go absolutely feral, turning the event into the Song of Roland, a dramatic epic where historical accuracy gets mugged in the first line. It's basically medieval fanfiction, and yes, it slaps. But if you thought Charlemagne was gonna take a nap after that Spanish faceplant, oh no, my guy went straight back to being a menace. First, he conquered Bavaria faster than you can find it on a map. Then he sets his sights on the Avars. Steppe nomads would spend the last century looting, raiding, and generally being medieval mosquitoes. In 791, Charlemagne launched a crusade that made Viking raids look like camping trips. He smashes their forts, ransacks their gold-stuffed capital, basically deleting their whole vibe, and leaves the survivors with the good old baptism or death question. But while Charlemagne's off converting pagans with the world's sharpest Bible, Rome does what Rome does best: implode. The Pope dies, business as usual, and the new guy, Pope Leo III, walks into the job with more drama than Hamlet monologuing. In 799, his enemies dragged him into the street, beat him half to death, and tried to blind him. That's how unpopular he was with the clergy. So Leo does what any reasonable man of God would do. He runs, straight over the Alps, right into Charlemagne's royal lap like a churchy Dasmal in distress. Charlemagne, now stuck playing medieval babysitter, hauls him back to Rome, flexes some royal muscle, and gets him back on the papal throne. Fast forward to literally 2 days later. It's Christmas Day 800 AD. Charlemagne walks into the church thinking, nice day for some Jesus. Instead, Pope Leo jumps out like a spiritual jack-in-the-box and slaps a crown on his head. And don't you dare take this as a normal coronation. Leo crowns Charlemagne as Augustus, which means Charlemagne goes from biggest scary king to emperor of the Romans. Shockingly, the whole new emperor in town situation wasn't exactly met with applause over in the east, because there was already an emperor of Rome. Or well, an empress. Over in Constantinople, Irene of Athens gets word that some tall Frankish dude just yoinked her job title like it was an unclaimed username. And she's understandably livid. She's ruling from the OG Roman capital, built by Constantine the Great himself. And now this guy strolls in from the Alps yelling, "I'm the new Augustus now." But part of why the Pope even dared to crown Charlemagne as the new Augustus was Irene herself. See, in the medieval brain, a woman running an empire was like a divine 404 error. Clearly, God had left the group chat. So the West figured, yes, the job's open. At this point, Charlemagne's empire looks less like a kingdom and more like someone rage-clicked select all on a medieval map. Francia, Italy, Bavaria, Saxony, bits of Spain, chunks of Germany, and a shiny papal friendship bracelet. But for a guy calling himself emperor, he's missing one crucial thing. An empress. And guess who's single? That's right, Irene. The very woman whose title Charlemagne just hard-launched. Our single mother empress who, and I'm not joking, was a proud owner of one severely blinded son. It's Eastern Rome, guys. Eye stabbings are basically foreplay. Let's be chill about all this, okay? And you know who was chill about it? That's right, Charlemagne. He hears this and goes, now that's wife material. His plan was simple. Marry Irene, mash the two Romes back together, and cosplay as the medieval Augustus and Livia. But before any wedding bells could toll, Irene gets booted off the throne in 802 by some very unromantic palace schemer. So instead of imperial matrimony and a Roman power couple, Charlemagne gets ghosted by history and goes back to pretending that the Eastern Roman Empire is just a myth that the monks made up to mess with him. But Charlemagne gets over the failed attempt at trying to wife his way into Constantinople and really leans into this new Holy Roman Emperor thing. He turns his capital, Aachen, into the closest thing Europe's seen to a Renaissance in centuries. Okay, so no Da Vinci's or marble news, but there were monks writing Latin that didn't look like a drunk spider crawled across the page. He even younks Alcuin of York, a British brainiac by the way, to teach the court how to spell again. This whole thing became known as the Carolingian Renaissance, which is impressive considering most of the population still thought books were wizardy, I guess. Charlemagne himself never learned how to read, but give the man some credit. At least he was an enthusiastic student. But alas, time comes for us all. Even for giants, illiterate empire-building gigachads. In 814, Charlemagne died of fever, as people usually tended to do back in the day, and he was buried in his lovely self-built capital, Aachen. Charlemagne had many children, like his son and successor Louis the Pious, but perhaps the most lasting ones were the nations that called him daddy. The French, the Germans, and half of Europe still squabble over who is actually Charlemagne's favorite. In the end, Charlemagne didn't just think about Rome. He became Rome, revived it, married it in his head, and left it to his confused descendants. Who did as any confused descendant would do: shatter it into pieces.